And with that, I think we're going to move on to our next session, which is going to be learning about Padlet. So once again, back to Laura and Michelle.
So I'm going to pop in and Laura, if it's all right, I'm going to stop your screen sharing and we're just going to swap. Is that okay?
Perfect.
All right. So we're going to go into that and I'm going to go into my desktop and go into share here and just move some stuff around. So, oops, done. Present. There we go. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Padlet tonight, and we want to be able to share this with you. Padlet is a really powerful tool, and it's been around a while. A lot of people know this tool as WallWisher, maybe before WallWisher was taken down and Padlet became more robust in what they were doing. And Padlet has since kind of gone up and down in its life. It's been very good. Overall, it's been pretty solid to use, and they've now come out with some new products. Just like most other, I guess, tools, they all find their way to be a paid versus a free subscription. So we've seen some changes with that. So I want to go through and talk a little bit about what we're going to look at tonight. We tried to mirror these two presentations, but we're going to talk about how to access Padlet. Some of you guys will have done that already, but we're going to give you a couple different background pieces to how you log into Padlet, what we do with it, and then some real simple hacks. And then we went through to do some examples about how you can really use Padlet. We're going to show you some live examples with our students as well. In fact, one that's live as of this morning, 2:35 a.m. My students were on it and playing with it. You can tell that middle schoolers have their schedules switched around a bit, I think, because of everything going on. And I got a ping on my phone and my first question of, "Hi, Ms. P, glad to see you. And can I play with Padlet already?" And so they had started in early. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving. So what is it? Really, Padlet is an interactive digital wall. Think about it as this. It's a way to have a white wall to put sticky notes, pictures, something you would project, lots of ways to use it. The nice part about Padlet is you have the option with Padlet to go in and use video and audio as well as links. And there's some cheats that we're going to show you. We'll see how we go in and out with this tonight. And it gives you some resources for some virtual collaboration and reflection after a project, lots of journaling, visual notes. Think of it as a really landing spot, a wall-based desktop. A lot of my kids do use it as a reminder. They use it as a bookmarking tool, and we'll be talking about that tonight. So I want to just start with a visual of what one looks like. And so I'm going to go into this project piece right here if it lets me out. Can you guys still see the share? Are you okay on that?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes,
so
must not have blocked you.
I don't know. So here we go. So this is a wall, and I'll give you a little bit of background to this. This is a very plain wall, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But this was a student project. Many of you know the rock project with painting a rock. We read a series of literature pieces that talked about the importance of stones in history, of stones throughout time. We talked about place and primary source with stones. Then we had the kids paint rocks and put them out in the community. And their goal was to post where their rock was and exactly why they put it there. I have to tell you, it was a very bittersweet and beautiful activity. As you can see, the kids took care in how they presented here and talked about it. Really easy to go onto the wall. They just clicked it and it brought a box up. You can see also, and I brought this up on purpose, I have permission to share the names here. So they do have a release, but you'll see that we have an anonymous as well as a name. We're going to talk about that. That's really attribution. And we're going to talk about how that works. But I wanted you to see what a wall can look like. A lot of times, we see in using a reflection process such as this, that the stories from your students come forward that you may have not heard in the classroom. I'll be very honest, through this rock assignment, I found out that one of my students the following day was going to be homeless and was able to help them. She put her rock in between two windows in her room that she was being evicted from. And it was through reading this that we found that out and were able to help her and her family. I don't know that we would have known that otherwise. At the same time, we let her go back and get her rock. This was 3 years ago, and she came back to see us. She still has it, and they're doing great now. But I want to just let you know that sometimes a project like this stands out as pretty meaningful. So I'm going to go back really quick and go back into this, and I want to have a conversation a little bit around Padlet. And I'm going to go back here. We talked about what it is, but there are some differences. So Padlet has 3 different types of Padlet right now, actually 4. They have a free version, which you can get up to 3 Padlets. That doesn't sound like a lot, but depending on how you manipulate and use those, it can work for you just fine. They have a Padlet piece that's called the Padlet Backpack. That's mainly for schools, marketed to school districts to give more security, to give a few more options in data collection, but mostly provides the opportunity for a single share URL and the ownership of a URL with Padlet. Now you can be a business as well. They have Padlet Briefcase, so you can do Padlet for business as a briefcase. And then you can also have a single version for an individual, which is Padlet Pro. I'm going to be honest, I use just regular Padlet with 3 Padlets until my district with online learning decided as of a day ago to pop in and do the enterprise, what we call the district version. What's the difference? The features are pretty much the same except for security and some data collection. What it is it gives you some URL capability to have your own URL, and I'll point that out to you. And it's a way for Padlet to make some money. And that's an honest piece with a lot of our social media. So I want to be upfront with that. But you can be really successful just using a standard Padlet. So let's talk about how we can do that. So you got to log in. And that's pretty easy, but I want to talk about that login for a second. When you go to the Padlet screen to log in, you're generally going to see a screen that looks to the right. Right up here, it says log into Padlet. If you're in the backpack version, your school has decided to buy the enterprise version, or maybe you as a teacher decide that it's worth the $99 for the year to purchase that, you can do that. And you can have your own domain. And you may see this box right here, enter your Padlet backpack or briefcase domain. Depending on the settings on your computer, if you allow cookies to be set, when you just put your domain, as in Adams 12, it will bring your account up for you automatically. But I'm going to tell you a hack right here. I don't go to that domain. Rather, I log in with my Google account, either personal or school. Because once you log in with that Google account, you can log into a private address, a private Padlet, or you can log into your school account. If you're logged in both ways, or you can access both ways, you can share Padlets back and forth, which makes it a little easier. So I would suggest to you that you use your Google account, and if you've got a school address, use it. But big hint, if you have a personal address, use that too, because you'll get some extra Padlets off of it. And so we'll talk about that as we go forward too. So let's go on. Let's talk about the steps after you log in. Once you log in, you really need to think about 5 ways that you're going to use Padlet. And those 5 ways are important. We're going to walk through those right now. Step number 1, you really need to think about your name. And why is this important? I mean, I've been known, Laura knows this, she can attest to it, to start a Padlet in between classes and just go for it. And I've done that before. But in being thoughtful with your names, it also allows you to be thoughtful with how you select your URL on a Padlet, because it's customizable. If you look here to the right, you can see the screen. This screenshot is right off of your Padlet. Now I'm going to talk you through these 5 steps, and then we're going to go live and I'll show it to you. But when you bring up this in settings, you can give a title, give a description of what that Padlet is. And then the address, you'll notice right here, I was in my school account, Adams 12. This is my ID. And then I decided to go ahead and name it my own name. Let me give you 2 hints here. Always put in a description. Otherwise, it's going to say, because it's beautiful, or because it's lovely, or because the dog asked. And those are legitimate things that Padlet puts up on your wall. And it's not that it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's all innocuous and humorous. But if you want to describe something for your students, make a point to put in a description. But think about the age of child you're working with, or the adult you're working with, or the seminar you're working with. Because you can customize your Padlet on the right purely by choosing your own name. They are rarely taken because it's used under your Enter ID. These Padlets are very buried in Google. You can find them with a link, but it gives you a huge amount of flexibility in how you name this. Teachers, this is really important for you, especially if you're a middle school or high school teacher where you may have multiple classes and you want to set up a Padlet for each class rather than having just one. You can name your Padlet with your class name, like, for example, American History 3rd or American History 4th. And by being thoughtful up front and doing that, you can reuse that Padlet, and your students get used to looking for that, especially if you're posting everything online on a calendar or somewhere else. So we'll talk about that as we move forward and when we go live, and I'll show it to you. The next thing you need to do is secure your Padlet. Security is a concern for all of us, and it's really important for all of us as teachers, especially in this online setting. But beyond that, it's important, period, to think about who can access your Padlet and what kind of writing capabilities they have. But in addition to that, it's also important to think about security in how you work with your kids. I mandate all of my kids to put their first name and last initial on their Padlet in their title or in the first sentence of their post. They're trained from the beginning to do that. They know how to do that. So if I don't have this particular red button set, which says attribution, I still know whose it is. I can go and look at my wall and see who put it up there. But that's a security risk. If they put their whole name first and last, and you make that wall public, and you have students that do not have an agreement with that, with your school or with your class, you could be putting them at risk. So we train them from the onset, first name, last initial. And because I'm a middle school teacher, I usually say 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever classes I'm teaching. As an elementary teacher, you may actually just put your teacher name in there for your students, or you may put a combined name if you teach science to 2 elementary classrooms. There's lots of ways to do it. But if you look at this particular piece, you can allow attribution, which means that it will show their name when they log in if they have an account. But this is only if they log into Padlet. If they don't log into Padlet, then they will show up anonymous, hence the reason you want the first and last name. You can allow comments to be posted. And this is an interesting one. You can allow reactions. Sometimes this is good, but I would encourage you to set down some expectations with your students to have a clear understanding of what kind of reactions you're allowed to use and their purpose. Otherwise, sometimes it can become a popularity thing, and sometimes it cannot work in the way that you want to, because they can vote a post and push it to the top if you set it that way. They can put multiple stars or hearts on a post, and depending on how you want to use that, you may or may not want to allow it. Here's the most important part. Filter profanity and require approval. If you are opening this to parents, for example, you may want to check the require approval. Now that means that you'll get notification that asks for approval for a post to be put on the wall. But it will allow people from outside the organization to post something. So we have a wall where our parents share feedback and comment on student presentations, but we moderate those posts so that we make sure that they're appropriate and they're constructive. Unfortunately, we just have to make sure that happens.
Often too, Michelle, we start with that require approval in any kind of our tools, Padlet, Flipgrid, and then you can kind of start to wean kids off of that, because it is time consuming for you. But once you kind of figure out who your characters are and talk to them, but you have this class culture and some rules around it, you can start to not have to require that approval anymore.
And I think it's important, as Laura says too, to realize that really discussing a digital footprint with kids is important, because this ends up being a digital footprint for them. We do filter profanity to make sure that nothing's there. Sometimes littles and bigs don't realize what they're saying or what they type. And I have to be honest, the filter profanity also comes in because Padlet is an app on your phone. And if you have a self-correct on your phone or a spell check or an autocorrect, it may correct to something that has profanity in it that was not meant to be that way, but this protects it from going up on the wall. On the right-hand side, you can see privacy settings. Circled in blue is the one I often use as a teacher, which is secret. We can keep this hidden from the public, but with a shared link, the students can access it. You can keep it totally private, or you can have a password. Right now, we have a question board for teachers for our building. I set it up this morning with our digital coach. And we went together and set it up with a password so that you had to have a password to access it, just to make sure that those questions weren't going out somewhere else that they didn't need to. The organizational wide lets anybody in the organization see it. And that is because this particular Padlet was created under the Padlet backpack. This organizational wide button is a bit different when you have a Padlet public. It's all public. It's just a public view. Anybody can get to it if they have the URL or if they search correctly. So you have to think about those kind of things. Let's talk about the next one, which is your third step, which is the fun part. It's looking good. You want to be able to change your background, choose a color scheme, choose your fonts. That's easy. That's the fun part. But something to remember here, if you are working with primary sources, consider whether you're working with sepia tone primary sources, brown ones, black and white images. You might want to choose a brighter background, a less busy background, one that won't bleed into the primary source piece, because when you have students that are posting multiple black and white images on a white background, it may bleed in and it's hard to distinguish. It's hard to distinguish for students that may not always wear their glasses, also visually impaired, may have some distinct issues there too. One thing that's nice to understand is on the appearance, you can change to different colored backgrounds. That helps with students who need to read on a certain color. But in addition to that, they can change the color of their post. So I have a visually impaired student that needs to have blue or purple paper, and she can change the color of her post to blue so that she can read it. And Padlet allows that. So take some of those simple considerations in when you're setting up your overall background of your Padlet. Then you need to think about how you're connected. You can connect through email. You can get a QR code. You can copy a link to Clipboard, and they've added on Share in Google Classroom. You can also add on to your learning management system, and you can do that through Schoology. Edmodo's a little finicky with it. Better to post a link in there with it. You can send things right out to email to have kids, if you have a classroom set of emails. I do this within Google Classroom, but if you want to send something out or send to parents, you can just get that and immediately shoot an email to your mail share or the list that you have. It's pretty classroom friendly. This has really happened in the last 2 years. It was not that friendly. You had your share links, but you didn't have all these immediate options. So this tells you that even in the private version, the just free version, you can still connect in all of these ways. This is beneficial for the company, but they really did this so that it's beneficial for the users so that you can share it a lot. And so it ends up being really good for the classroom. But you do have to be careful to make sure your security is set correctly when you do that. This is a great piece because when I first started using Padlet, collecting the data was a nightmare. Today, you can export your entire Padlet wall as an image. You can save it as a PDF now. We used to have to take screenshots of the different sections of the Padlet wall. Now you don't have to do that. You can even save it as an Excel spreadsheet. It's a little strange with the photos in there, but if kids are doing textual pieces with it, it will save it in an Excel spreadsheet and you have an automatic record of who has posted if they're mandated to log in. And that's important to think about with students because you should be encouraging your students to use a school email or their Google email to log in. That helps in this process. Finally, You can just print it. And before, unless you Control P to print your screen, you didn't have that option. But now you can. These are newer features that have been in the last 18 months. I can tell you the PDF is absolutely rock star, and the image is pretty cool too. You can send the image, I'll just say this, you can text the image and kids can open and close the image to see it. It does zoom in. The pixelation is not horribly bad. It's not like some. It's not perfect, but it's not horrible pixelation. It is a medium quality picture to be able to share. So I'm going to pause right there because we just gave you a lot of information. Do I have any questions from you all at all right now?
Yeah, Michelle, the only question we have from Kathy Fuller is just locating exactly where those privacy settings you were talking about are at in the interface.
Perfect. And we're going to go out live right now, and we're going to show you that. Is that okay? Is that the only question we've got right now? So I can go forward?
There's only question at the moment, and if anybody else has questions, please put it in the chat box, and we'll address those soon.
Yeah. So I'm going to go forward right here. I'm going to talk about a few hacks, and then we're going to go live. So I want to talk about these because I'm going to show them to you. Padlet, you can now drag and drop. Take something totally off your desktop and dump it onto your Padlet. Not a problem. Attribution, you can turn on your attribution when you first start your Padlet so that you can see who has put their work in. But then after you're done, you can turn the attribution off, which will clear all the names, and you can share it publicly, which is really great for when you want to grade your work or record student answers and reflections, but then want to share it publicly. You can use it as a bookmark wall. My kids drag and drop their bookmarks straight from their Chrome browser. You drag it down, throw it in, and it's right there, and it acts as a visual bookmarking system. You've got your data collection and your exporting system. And the thing to remember when you change attribution or your privacy, you can go to a total private environment versus a public. It doesn't change the content on the wall. In some social media programs it does. Here it remains intact. That also means as teachers we need to be thoughtful with that. And then the quick hack over here, make sure that you're thinking about the contrast. And we're going to show that. So I want to go live. I'm going to click here and go out if that's okay. It's going to take me to my Padlet. And if it's all right, are you seeing that okay, you guys? I want to just double check. Are you good?
It's come up.
Perfect. Okay. So pardon all the tabs. That's just how I live. It's a to-do list, but I brought some things for you too. So this is my current Padlet setting. Now you don't see a lot of Padlets in here because this is my school one that I just went into. And there's a few in here that I started, but my regular one has like 30 in there. So I want to show you a few things that we've been talking about. But first I want to show you a wall really quick because I'm going to go right here and click on this. And you can see these are my kids that started. Actually, Vanessa was just in hers 10 minutes ago. You can see the kids right here and they're posting and they're using primary sources. We're doing an A to Z project. Here you can see the blue background and the yellow background, which I spoke of. You can see that these have images as well as multiple styles of fonts and printing. So now I want to go back and I want to show you how to do this, if that's okay. So I'm just going to move for a second and I'm going to go back to my original Padlet and I'm going to go in here and I want to make a Padlet. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start at the front. Here's how, and we're going to show you some examples later, and trust me, we have a ton of hot links for you so that you can go in. These are all the different types of Padlets that you can do. You can have a canvas where you connect content, a wall. You can stack things in what we call a shelf so that when you use that shelf, everything stacks in columns. You can use it like a back channel. If you've used Poll Everywhere, or maybe Mentimeter, or some other back channels, even Twitter, it can act as a back channel. You can have your students log into your Padlet wall and contribute information while you're having a conversation, and then go back to that information, maybe to answer questions. Maybe you give them a task or a critical thinking prompt that while you work with a primary source, they're creating that back channel for you. You can also add points on a map. And this one is Rockstar. You can now do a timeline and it will scroll for you. To make it simple, I'm just going to go to a wall. I'm going to pick that right now. It's going to start my Padlet for me. And this is where those security settings and all those pieces are here. And I'm going to play with them a little bit just to show you. Can you see where we are right now? And you see the modify on this side. You can see this is what I'm talking about in the description. So it always gives you a title in case you forget what you want to say. So I'm going to put sample right here. And description, made with mirth. And I'm going to put made with primary sources. Now, I did that on purpose. Notice that right here, it does have spell check. And that happens with on your wall too. That's not in all social media programs. It is here in Padlet. So I'm just going to right click and fix it. You can also choose an icon. If I click on icon right here, I can choose something to put up there, but I also can add my own. So I can add a picture or an image that's my own, and that icon will come right up here in the corner. From right now, I'm just going to put a smile, and you'll see where that icon pops up. You can also choose not to have an icon if you would elect not to do that. Now I'm going to scroll down for a second. This is important. Note, here's that mess that I was talking about. Remember I said, think carefully about how you want to name your Padlet. So I've named it up here, but I'm going to change it down here too. So I'm going to take that out and I'm going to put sample. And when I hit next and I save, that's going to come up into my URL box at the top of my screen. Now I'm not a fan of the green background, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to look and I don't know, choose a picture. I'm going to choose a map for today. We're going to use a map. Or maybe you prefer to use party streamers. Play with them a little bit, but understand that there's lots and they change. The pictures here, you can add your own as well. The gradients and the solid colors work really well, especially with working with primary sources or some particular colors. If you want to do a school page, for example, you can use your school colors in there. So I'm going to go back to blue and just use a plain blue background right now. And I'm going to scroll down. I'm not going to change the color scheme here or the font, although you can choose different ways to write. But I am going to turn on the attribution. And this is important, the new post position. This helps you as a teacher. It can also help you as a student. Now, sometimes I tell my students, you have to look at the last post and post a response to that. To help them do that, I choose my post position as being last. That means that the last person who posts will always be at the top of the screen. If I choose first, the first person who posts will be there, but then as the screen gets longer, I will have to scroll down. I am not going to do reactions right now, but I'm going to go ahead and click on that so you can see. You can choose to like posts. You can choose to vote. You could have two different opinions or two diverse sources and have students select which one that they want to have a conversation about in class. That's one really good example of why you would want to use upvoting. You can also give post stars if you'd like, or you can grade it. The grade part's interesting because you as a teacher can go in and grade the posts. I have to be honest, I do not use that grade piece openly in a class-wide post, but my students also have Padlets that are their own. And if it's their own Padlet that is only shared with me, I will go ahead and choose the numeric grade, and I can go in and grade their posts if it's on their own wall. Before I go forward, I'm going to stop because I think there's some questions. Go ahead, Laura.
You're getting close on time, so you may want to check out some of your really neat resources and just show them where to get more information. But one thing maybe show really quickly just how easy it is to just post one thing on the wall. It's just really
I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to take 2 minutes and we'll finish up. So I just double clicked. When I double click, I can upload an image if I'd like to. I can put a title. This is where I tell my kids that they need to put their information in, and they can write something like that and click, and there's their post. It's movable and it can be connected as well. So I'm going to hop out because I want to go back to our presentation really quickly. You'll have a chance to play with this because I want to go ahead and finish up and give you some resources really quick. We have a lot of primary sources for you. We have linked them in multiple pages for you. And if you click on the links, you will notice that it will take you out to an example of primary sources. This is a beautiful one. We had a scholar, actually, one of our TPS director, Peggy O'Neill-Jones, came in and did a photography piece with my students. They mimicked primary sources, and you can take a look at them. They're gorgeous. And you can see what they wrote in reflection to the learning. So we've given you 2 different slides that give you some resource examples. And we also have given you more. If you click this QR code, it's going to give you 10 more ideas on using Padlet and primary sources. And then we've got a 1-page reference. Laura gave you one for Screencastify. Here's one right here for Padlet. The links, if you take the QR code, you can click on all of the links. It will take you to a PDF. And it's tutorials, it's past posts, lots of information for you. And then you can find Padlet online at padlet.com. That's the easiest place to find it. And I'm going to end right there and answer any questions. Those of you who need to fill out your reflection form, you can do that with TPS right now. And I'm happy to answer questions in the chat box or openly if you want to stick around. So Keith, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle and Laura. That was great. I'd not got that much of a walkthrough on it, so I have a lot of things to try now. As a reminder, their presentations can be found on their blog at bit.ly/2geekyteachers, along with many other resources. And that's posted in the chat box, so you can grab that real quick before you leave today. That way you can grab the full presentation, all the resources. Also, just like to thank Kyle, who's been helping in the chat room, and also the Library of Congress for making these webinars possible through the TPS program. As Michelle mentioned, if you're looking to get a PD certificate today, the link is right up there. It's at bit.ly/PS Teaching Online. It'll just be a very quick reflection and how to contact us so we can get that emailed out to you. And like I said, all these resources are being recorded and will be available on the TPS Teachers Network, as well as our other outlets for the TPS Western region. So you'll be seeing those up. So if you found this valuable, you can review them, share them with your friends, share them with your networks. These are all just here to help teachers through this time when we're really having the shift to online learning. And with that, I appreciate your time. I'm just scanning real quick to see if you have any last minute questions. Otherwise, I think we're pretty well wrapped up, and I thank you for your time.